This afternoon. This is Michael MacDonald here, and Deirdre Parker. I want to introduce Deirdre. I suppose we're co-chairs on the Psychometric Community of Practice. This is season 2, and this session should have been held earlier, but we had to postpone. But thankfully, we have everybody, all our participants are back with us today. The topic is learning through application, strengths-based development, and helping our students put their strengths to work. And this, I suppose, came about a couple of months ago, probably back in November, actually, when I attended a Grad Ireland event, and Capfinity, represented by James here today and Trudy, they presented their work, and I thought it might be an idea to bring that into a session for the Psychometric Community of Practice, hence why we're all here. Everybody would have got a link to sample the strengths-based assessment provided by Capfinity. Hopefully you'll get time to review that, and that's part of the session. So just, I suppose, to move on to the agenda, just the introductions, I'll do them now. So the presentations will be in 3 parts. Presentation 1 is looking at the tool itself, and James and Trudy will walk us through the tool itself, and I suppose a little bit around the theory and helping us decode, which is a fairly obvious report, but the self-assessment that you report that people would have received if you've completed the self-assessment. And the second presentation then, we would like to welcome Bridie Killeran, and I'll just introduce her more in depth when it comes to her session. So it's about 20 minutes per presentation. We'll give time then for a Q&A at the end of each of those for about 5-10 minutes. And after that, James will introduce John Byrne. So John Byrne, we're very lucky to have him, and he will be joining us later on. But he will be coming from the Manchester Metropolitan University and looking at how strengths profiles have helped students at scale. Right, at a significant scale, something I was very pleasantly surprised to see. So that will be coming up in the final session. And then if there's time left at the end, we will also have an opportunity to take some questions. But of course, people can put the questions into the chat, which I will be monitoring throughout. And I'll feed those questions back to our presenters. And at the end, then we have a link to a doodle for those people who are enthused by our presentation today to maybe be a little bit more proactive and join us in the community of practice. We have a meeting coming up in the next few weeks, so there'll be a doodle there for people to see if you would like to join us. All right.
Yeah, if I could just step in there, Michael. I think we actually have a date and time.
Okay, good.
But I can put that link to the maybe invite or the meeting into the chat if people want to join us. The more, the more new people that are interested, it would be fantastic.
Excellent. That's perfect. Even further along than I thought. That's great. So I'll pass over to James then, maybe if you want to introduce Trudy, and I'll pass it over to you now.
That's great. So what I'll do, I'll bring up my screen just to make sure I can share my hello screen there. Can everyone see introducing Capfinity?
Yeah, it's good to go, James.
Yeah. Super. So thanks for that introduction, Michael, and nice to meet you all again at scale. I think Michael's mentioned that phrase already. So I'll just briefly introduce myself. It's a Scottish accent, but I've been living and working now in Ireland for 23 years at this stage. I live up in Dundalk, and Capfinity have our office down in Dublin, and been working with Capfinity for over 3 years at this stage, and I lead the kind of team in the island of Ireland. Prior to Capfinity, I've worked most of my adult life in recruitment in some guys, worked for Monster.com for years, worked for staffing firms like Michael Page, and actually coincidentally a graduate of Manchester Met myself, which was a nice coincidence as well. So what I'll do, when Trudy, I'm just going to do a brief kind of overview of who Capfinity are first, and then I'll let Trudy introduce herself when she starts to talk about the strengths piece in more detail. And just to add to what Michael said there, Trudy and I will be able to answer questions in chat as well, if there's any specific kind of technical questions. So Michael, just as Bridie's presenting and as John's presenting, we'll try and support you if we can with any queries coming through the chat that we can answer on the fly. Okay, so who are Capfinity? We are around for almost 20 years at this stage, founded in 2005, and the kind of main head office is in Birmingham in the UK, with another office in London in the UK as well. We kind of expanded into the US with an office in New York, and to Asia Pac with an office in Australia as well. And we've now at this stage got over 250 clients, and really interestingly, we have assessment solutions that are working across 80 different countries at this stage, which is pretty amazing if you imagine all the different kind of challenges that brings with languages and different cultures and such like. And we're particularly proud of, we've got a retention rate of 98%. So we tend to build kind of long-standing and strong relationships with the clients that we do bring on board, whether that's in the universities, in the career side, or in the kind of employer side themselves. So we've got, because of that kind of activity, we've got a really enormous big data set that really kind of allows us to be confident in the assessments we're building are valid. So the validity is a massive part of our strengths ourselves. And also we've got a really kind of substantial team of IO psychologists, data scientists that are really making sure there's a rigor and there's a truth behind the assessments we build. So probably our unique selling point is that we're measuring skills and strengths through not just capability and performance, but as you'll hear Trudy go into more detail very shortly, but also through engagement and motivation and energy as well. So we're very lucky to have one of our co-founders is a lady called Nikki Garcia. The other co-founder is Alex Lindley, and they come from a kind of psychology background themselves. Nikki is an IO psychologist herself, and she is quite active. She's a global kind of customer service person who deals with a lot of clients right across the globe. So again, I've just listed some of the kind of media publications that she often appears in, from the likes of the Wall Street Journal across to Wired and Forbes as well. So that is a very brief introduction to Capfinity. So now I'll hand over to Trudy.
Lovely, thanks James, and it's lovely to see many of you. If not those who are potentially not got their cameras on, I'm sure you're enjoying a lovely lunch. Well, I hope you are at least. So it's lovely to be here with you, and thanks for having me to talk more around strength. So James has done a great job of kind of setting the scene, and I'm going to go into a lot more detail around the profile. And I'm hoping you guys have had a chance to take it yourself. I think there's a good bunch of you that certainly have. If you haven't, don't worry, you can take the assessment either at the end of the session, no problem at all, or that link will be open for a little while yet. So my name is Trudy Bateman. I'm the Director of Strengths Profiles. So my role at Capfinity for the last 14 years or so has been to lead the team and the product. And so I've been strengthening people for all that time. And my top strength is legacy and mission. So if you expect any rules to be followed this afternoon, that's not going to be me, but hopefully I'm going to inspire and motivate you around the area of strengths as we go. I will try and keep to time. So in terms of the strengths approach, then many of you have taken it, so hopefully you can kind of be going back and forth in your own profile, so it makes a bit more sense as we go on the journey together. But what we're doing in that assessment, and typically in a lot of the things that we do at Capfinity, are measuring performance. You'd expect that, the things that we do well, we're really looking at what it is that we excel at, what it is that we do well, what it is that we're likely to do well at in the future as well. So we're looking at that performance. But a piece that's quite different is the energy, the motivation, the what drives us, what gets us out of bed, our passion, our loves. This is the bit that is really unique to Strengths Profile. So we're measuring that in Strengths Profile, and again, across other Capfinity assessments. And it's also use as well. So we're looking at how often we do it, because that plays a really important part in terms of, how much we could be doing it more of in the future, and perhaps informing our future development there as well. So I'm going to come on to a bit more around that model and what that looks like as well. So performance, energy and use, making up the model that you see on the right hand side, and I will walk through it in a little bit more detail as well. So obviously it's an online assessment, but what we do is identify your realised and your unrealised strengths, your learned behaviours and your weaknesses. And I want to just walk through really briefly kind of like the different quadrants there, because they are kind of what make up the USP here. So our realised strengths, and the things that we do really well, the things that we keep us energised, the things that we love doing, the things that we probably do an awful lot of in terms of that use as well. So because of all of those things, I love it. I do it really well and I do it all the time. we do need to use them wisely. Okay, so we need to just keep an eye on that use wisely. So that might mean draw on it more, it might mean draw on it less. There is a risk potentially that we might even overplay a strength at times. So there are realised strengths, perhaps not always a massive surprise, but I find the language is really helpful for students to be, to really understand. Starting from a blank sheet of paper for students, so difficult, but actually they've got language here to really start those conversations around really naming those strengths, having confidence to talk about them at different stages of their life as well. So the realised strengths, then we've got the learned behaviours. So when we're coaching, we walk this way around, anti-clockwise. Because we want to cover we want to end in the unrealised strengths, so we kind of want to cover the learned behaviours and the weaknesses in the middle. The learned behaviours are really important, not just for you here on the audience, because these are the things that catch us out. Okay, these are things that we do really well, but they can be de-energising, so might cause burnout, and maybe they're the things that we're recognised for in our environment or our teams around us, but actually the things that we don't maybe want to be recognised for. And in the use here is variable. So again, I find with students, these are the things that they've been doing for 18, 20 years or so, and they've been doing them really well, but no one stopped and said, hey, do you love this? Is this what you want to be doing for the rest of your life? So there's a wake-up call here for ourselves and for our students in this area. So it's an area that I love coaching in, because you can see the moment where people go, oh, these aren't my strengths then, even though I'm really good at them. Yup. So again, I know that we mentioned on the chat, if there's any questions at all on this going through, certainly during after the assessment when Bridie and John are speaking, I'd be more than happy to be your coach this afternoon. Going into weaknesses then, hopefully, again, most of us have them. It's about open honesty, keeping people safe in that space of building trust. We've all got them. So these are the things that we don't do so well, and they don't energize us. So and particularly for students, we want to be thinking about avoiding this area in the future and using our strengths to compensate. And then unrealised strengths, then this is kind of the gold mine. This is what people kind of call the rainbow, or the gold at the end of the rainbow, is that these are things that we do really well, that we're really energised in, but actually we've got less use here. So what we want to be doing here is using them more, particularly in career development. These are things that we've got hidden potential in, but we might not know it because we're not using it. Other people will not recognise this in us either. So as I sort of finish the session, I'll be showing you kind of what a conversation might look like in all of these 4 areas with a student as well. So 4 areas there that you can see, and all those 4 areas mean that it's quite a holistic approach. We look at the 60 strengths then. So that is typically, if you've ever come across a strengths assessment before, and I'm sure many of you have, or other personality assessments, we do cover more strengths than you'd expect to see in other reports. What that means is that you get quite a granular feel to the assessment. So, we're really getting to the detail now. Is it planner? Is it organizer? Is it detail? What is it that you love about your kind of organising thinking strengths? So that it's really important to think about the actual, the strengths in that we've got, but also, the volume. But you don't have to have access to all the volume. You just have, in your introductory reports, you'll typically use 7 realised, 7 unrealised, 7 learned, and 4 learned, and then 3 weaknesses as well. So the 60 strengths is quite a bit to get your head into initially, but again, you don't have to use them all. We do have 6 different types of profiles available. So a couple of years ago, we launched the free one, and we do find many universities using the free one in combination with maybe the introductory profile and a few experts. We recently launched the leader profile as well. So I won't go into detail, but there's the assessment's the same. Your output you can choose, and depending on the detail that you want and the audience that you're working with as well. The use model. So we talk about the use model, and this is the use wisely, use when needed, is really important, because unless we know what to do with our profiles, they become words on a bit of paper that we don't necessarily take action on. So really important that we understand, as we're coaching our students, how will you use them wisely? How do you need to use these only when you need to, and how do you use them less and more? Because this is where you want them to take action. It's not just a label we want them to wear. These strengths will change over time, in fact. So we really want the students to be able to take action and really think about how to maximize their results and kind of bring it to life as such. And it's not about us helping as consultants here in the strengths profile world. We've got training and toolkits. We really want you to help your students in the best way that you can. And it's about using them every day with your students. So I will share a slide shortly that's about application. But we know that, if we're your consultants, you're not going to get the best from the product either. So, we want to be able to really train you to have those conversations, to apply it yourself, to be a strengths ambassador, because when you can use that approach, you can really start to embed the culture. And Bridie and John are going to do an amazing job of sharing how they've been able to do that themselves and go on a real journey with it as well. In terms of the strengths benefits then, on our website, if you love science, and I'm sure most of you do, then please, we've got white papers here that support this in terms of the evidence and the science behind it. But when we're working with our students, our individuals, when we use our strengths, it builds confidence, it helps us combat, helps become more resilient, helps us combat stress more. When we set our mind to our goals and we align our strengths, we're more likely to achieve them, the science tells us so. And that makes sense, doesn't it? And really supports our happiness and our self-esteem. And I think in the sort of where we are right now, then lots of talk about mental health, burnout, well-being. It's a really important place for everyone to be in terms of it brings you energy, it brings you passion, and you're working on things that you love. So the science kind of makes sense to me, but also it's important to know that it's a validated tool as well. In your teams that you're working with, so if as individuals yourselves start to think about some of these ways to apply strengths, that's where the science shows us that it's really productive. In terms of helping build relationships in your teams, delegating, and of course creating the culture and environment that you want in that team. Obviously, as educators, it's really helping students think about their excitement, get more confident, but also motivated around their future, get excited about their future, have really engaging conversations. And again, Bridie and John will take you on that journey. And of course, James will share with you how our organisations are using strengths, but what it's great for your students to do is to see the sort of breadth of strengths. Isn't something that you're going to do with them in career services. It's something that they're going to experience in their worlds of work, whether it's in their teams, whether it's for themselves, or whether it's in their organisation. We're all applying strengths to get the best from ourselves. A little bit there around the science. And I kind of want to just have a couple of slides now just to kind of practically what does that mean. So I put up here sort of what I would call a conversation around strengths, how you might have a strengths conversation with a student. And just to bring it to life a little bit more. So, in our realised strengths, the most important thing you can do for your students is give them the confidence of who they are at their best. What it means for them to dig out their resources when they are being natural, when they feel confident, when they're excelling. So, and my experience is students aren't always that confident about what that looks like. They haven't had the experience. So your job would be to help them really think about, okay, help them sit back up on the chair. Actually, do you know what? Humour. I am funny. I do relieve stress. I do put people at ease. I really help build communication. All strengths have got such a valuable part for them to understand the story, their success stories that they've got to date, and also where they then want to take them. I often find students have got, strengths that maybe have served them to date. They've got maybe work ethic, they might have organising. They're the things that they've had to use here and, maybe are starting to enjoy, but do they want to be known for those for the rest of their future? Is it something that they really want in their careers? Helping them to kind of weed out the things that are helpful to them now and the things that they really want to be known for in their future. Because certainly after 14 years in this space, it's many leaders that I've coached, after many years in a role where you kind of go, actually, I don't want to be known for that. It's just what I am known for. So, your role could be to really help students think about their passion going forward now. In the unrealized strengths, unlock them, and think about, ways in which they could be using these more in future roles, or how they can start to get development now. If something they're aspiring to that you're helping them think about now, you've unlocked that, then what's the path for exposing that more in their development, and so that they can be thinking about the role and the future for them. You know, how do they kind of learn more around the unrealised strengths to give them more confidence in that space? And then finally, the bottom two, it's really around kind of understanding the impact that they might be having. Our learned behaviours are a great resource. If you're looking at yours, many people have work ethic in there, by the way. So if you're questioning that, about 70% of us will have work ethic in our learned behaviours. But you know, your students will too. Understand what's draining and why, and what's the impact there. How do they maybe dial them back a bit? You know, how might they how might they want to make them strengths in the future? Where do they want to take that journey of a learned behaviour? Because remember, these are things that they're already doing well. So a great resource for them to lean on. So Spotlight for me is a bit of a learned behaviour. You know, I love being here because it's the legacy, it's the mission, it's all the excitement of impact on strengths. But if I'm really honest, you know, Spotlight is something that can make me a bit nervous. It's not something that I kind of, you know, go, whoa, you know, I've got an audience. It's something that I'm comfortable with, but it's not what drives me. It's not what gets me out of bed in the morning. So you see the difference in kind of what can drive us, but versus what we need, and helping your students get to the bottom of those can really help those career choices. And then finally, the weaknesses. You think about what's going to impact their future, help them become more confident, help them to use their strengths to compensate in the areas of their weaknesses. So, you know, anything that's critical, that's going to impact, you know, the job search space, but also, you know, what would they want to avoid going forward as well, and how their strengths might help. So that's my kind of bringing it together as a conversation. 2 more slides and I'm going to hand back to James. Also in the strengths profile, you probably got it yourself, is the career guide. I mean, take a step back from this, help people think about the types of sectors, roles that would suit them. You know, when people are you know, when you're playing to roles in this space, and many of us wear many hats. You might look at yours and think, actually, I'm doing 3 of those roles. I think I'm doing 5 of the ones that came up for me. But help people think about, you know, what they could be doing more of, or, you know, what they might need to build going forward. How might they need more support and experience to get, you know, to move in this direction, or just to comfort them and know that they're on the right path already. So explore that, and we've got many tools that can help you later on as you go down that path as well. And I also just wanted to share, I'm very passionate that strengths isn't just a one-off conversation, or it's just not a one glance look at your profile and put it in a drawer. There's so many things that you can do with a student, and I know John and Bridie are going to bring this to life, but there's a whole piece around self-awareness and so many exercises that you can do with them that I really think about, you know, giving them the confidence to be more self-aware. Then there's the career readiness section, you know, around strengths. Again, how do you help them do all of these things thinking about their strengths? It's not just that kind of one-off conversation. Lots of things to give them confidence in their futures as well. So there are many resources, again, we've got on our site that kind of show you that strengths is, you know, much more than just a one-off conversation in year 1 at uni. And again, I know that John's got some great data on that as well. And then very finally, I promise before handing back to James, is, you know, we're working with many universities already, and what I would say is that we're partnering with you, and hopefully Bridie and John will pick up on that as well. So, you know, we just want to be there to support the journey of strengths with you, to help your students, you know, start shaping their futures. And it's a great journey in terms of, you know, what we say, we're not there to hold your hand. What we are there to do is just to partner, to support. Our purpose as Capfinity is actually strengthening the world. So anything that we can do to make that journey easier for you, then that's what we just love doing. That's what I love doing, my legacy and mission. So on that note, I'm going to hand back to James. I'm free now for the next hour. I'm an expensive coach, but today, for the next hour, I could be free for you on chat. So please do make use of me, and I look forward to connecting with you all at a later date.
Thanks, Trudy. I just noticed I can't move my cursor when I share my screen with Trudy, so rapidly trying to take off mute. But thanks for sharing that, Trudy. And as Trudy says, what I'm going to talk about now, I'm going to talk about, we've spoken about the students on campus. Let's talk about when students are entering the workforce and how employers are using Strengths Profile and the Capfinity solutions. Now, this is a very busy slide, but what I want to just to show with this slide is We work with a number of different organisations in a huge number of sectors, whether it's in pharmaceutical, public service, professional service, transport. So the solutions we provide aren't just for a specific part, a specific type of company. They really do work across all industries and also all sizes of organisations. In Ireland, we're working with some organisations with only 300 or 400 people, sometimes with 100 people working for them, right up into the massive employers such as Accenture and Deloitte. So we really do work with all types of organisations, all sizes, and in all kind of parts of the world. And a couple of points that Trudy made there, talking about the journey. Once the students have finished their journey on campus and are applying for jobs and using some of these assessments, you know, some people might hear skills used a lot in the employer side. Well, what's a skill? A skill is a strength that a strength is a skill that you're engaged with, you're motivated, and you use frequently. So the language sometimes is interchangeable. And again, hopefully we've made it quite clear what a strength is and what the component parts of a strength are. But again, some of your students who are applying for these organisations, many of these organisations are using strengths as their language already, which means the students will feel very comfortable with the conversations they're having as they apply for these jobs and apply for careers. Now, within Ireland ourselves, here's some of the organisations we're working with. Again, time doesn't allow me to go into a lot of detail about what we're doing with them, but again, please feel free in future meetings or offline to speak to me about if you're interested specifically in what we're doing with some of these organisations themselves. I was just conscious of time, and I just want to make sure I'm not eating into Bridie's time. I'll just show you very briefly some examples specifically of organisations we're working with. With GSK, it's a truly global solution we're delivering for them across 50 countries. And the consistency of approach with the likes of GSK not only benefits their recruitment strategy, but it also means if people are trying to move from country to country within GSK, the conversation, the internal mobility is made much easier because they're all speaking the language of strengths. And with this example with GSK, it really meant that the HR teams became confident and competent with this approach when they were using it across multiple countries. Then with HSBC, it's another example used across many countries, this time in the banking sector. But this time, HSBC had a significant impact on bias within their recruitment process, and that led to 51% of offers being made to female graduates and interns, which was significantly higher than the industry average of 39%. And this solution also allowed graduates and interns without a finance degree to perform as well as those who came from a background or a degree in finance. So it really kind of leveled the playing field and allowed HSBC to consider more applicants at the top of the funnel. And then finally, just I've kind of touched upon the DE&I. DE&I, as you all know, is becoming a huge consideration for all organisations when they're bringing people on board. So a couple of examples with Accenture, who have been using Capfinity for years now. They reported that 87% of students reported that they felt less anxious and in control of how to complete the assessment. So I think Trudy touched upon this, helping with that anxiety piece, especially coming out of the COVID years. That is a huge consideration in how to really give students or empower students to feel more confident about how they're facing up to organisations as they transition from student to work. With Fidelity, they saw a 50% increase in completion rates across the assessment. And further than that, 85% were actually accepting the offers once they were given, which was more than a third of an increase with the process they had before. And finally, with the United Nations, it was a really interesting project where the United Nations Development Programme were targeting populations of candidates that might not previously applied for the organisation. So they saw 58% of applicants from the females and 97% from underrepresented countries themselves. So I'll draw breath, and we're, I think, running maybe 3 or 4 minutes behind schedule. So want to put it out if there's any questions that we can answer, Trudy and I can answer before we go on to Bridie, or else Michael, we could possibly just put them into chat so that Bridie can start her part of the presentation.
Yep, I think we are answering the questions there. Trudy is working away. There was I just put one in there about Teams, but I'm happy just to look at that later on. We'll pass. Anybody have any questions they would like to unmute and just throw in a question there? The strengths-based profile assessment, somebody just signed up. Yes, we can send you on the link afterwards, of course. Yeah, not everybody has signed up. Yeah, we can forward the link. Okay, so we will move along then. So thank you very much to James and to Trudy. I think I suppose the realization for me is when students look at their strengths, particularly those unrealized strengths, that to my mind seems to be the one that stands out for a lot of students. It's the personal awareness piece and the self-reflection. It's so powerful for that, and I think thank you guys for showing us this. So I'm going to move along then. As I said, I'm going to invite our next speaker to come up. So just 1 second now.
Sorry,
so
Michael,
Bridie,
I
can you hear me?
I think Patsy had a question just further up for Trudy. Something about work ethic and sorry, yeah, it was just before your Teams one.
Okay.
Why so many of us have work ethic as a learned behaviour, and she's not clear about what that signifies. It's a question for Trudy.
So I think Trudy gave an answer there, but if you want to talk a little bit more to that, Trudy, fire away.
Sure. So yeah, I did pop it in a chat so that everyone could see it, but ultimately around 70% of people have work ethic, and my view very much is that a work ethic is something that we do really well. You're really good at it, but it can drain us work when we're working really hard and a lot of the time. So people that really have high energy and high performance in work actually are potentially at risk of burnout. So I would suggest that actually having work ethic as a learned behaviour is in a fairly good place, because remember, you're not saying you're lazy. We're saying you do it really well, but sometimes your energy is not, there 24 hours a day. So, and that is because we have well-being and we have other lives going on around that. So, this is purely about work. So I think, it's in a healthy place, but again, it's up to you. If it's right in the top of that 1 to 4, because that's when you need to coach yourself and potentially think, is that in a healthy, good place for me? And where do I want to move it to?
Very good. Thank you. People seeing the answers to those questions? Can you see the answers to those questions?
If
Yes.
you open the chat for you can see them, yeah.
Oh yeah,
Yep.
Sorry, that's my mistake. Sorry, I didn't realise.
No, it's okay. It's okay.
Apologies, Michael. Thanks. Yeah.
Just to double check, because there's no point putting answers in if nobody can see them. Okay, then Bridie. Bridie is up next. So the second element of today's session, we're looking at strengths in action. So the implementation of this tool. Bridie, I'm delighted to welcome. Bridie is from the A2U career, and she is the Learning Pathways Manager with the HCI Higher Ed 4.0 project, which is managing the establishment of a regional external service for careers and learning pathways, including recognition of prior learning for people in the workplace. So it's a slightly different angle, but I think it's just going to be so interesting just to see how this is delivered. So Bridie, are you okay to move ahead? Yeah.
Hi, Michael, and thank you so much for that introduction. And great to see everybody here again. A lot of people I recognise here in the meeting. So yeah, so I'm involved in a very innovative project that has been funded by the Human Capital Initiative, and it was very much focused on helping people in the workplace re-engage with higher education and also the recognition of prior learning. So as I say, it's very kind of apt, I suppose, in terms of the challenges now that employers have for upskilling, reskilling and succession planning with their employees. There was also a work package for working with young people who may feel disengaged or disenfranchised from education. So again, we'll be just showing you a little kind of program that we built to look at that. So I suppose it's very different to the internal work that's happening within the career services within ATU, and obviously they're doing fantastic work there. This is an external service and it is part of the Higher Ed 4.0 project. I know some of my colleagues involved in the project are here in the call. There's Patrick, Lorraine and Sally. So hi everyone, I've got some help there if there's lots of questions. So we're going to just showcase, and as I say, we aren't recording this part because we're still in pilot phase with the program. So there's still some kind of work to be done, but we just want to give you an idea of what we have developed. So if that's okay, I know Caroline, you're just